Hey everyone, it's Paul Villa here. For some of you, that's Professor Paul Villa. For others, that's just Paul Villa. And today I wanted to put out a video that talks about something debate related and something that I think is very important in debate, and is very important especially for my college students, which is a video about the stock issues when we're talking about policy debate, right? And that doesn't necessarily have to be policy debate as an activity, but it can be policies type debates within parliamentary debate and things of that nature. And so I want to jump right into it. And this is a very, I would say, novice level discussion of this topic. And so for some of you who are more advanced, this might not be particularly interesting, but hopefully there's a little bit of something for everyone. So getting right into it. Today, I'm going to be going over how I would go about writing a case because this is something that my students have to do, and I just kind of want to help them in that process and sort of supplement lecture type stuff, especially during this time where I don't get to meet face to face with them. So, today we have the resolution, which is the United States federal government should shorten the work week. And hopefully everyone here understands that when we're talking about the work week, we're talking about in the United States, there's this sort of culture around a 5-day, Monday through Friday work week. Usually you work 8 hours approximately. And so what this resolution is asking us to do is to defend the work week is changed to some amount of time shorter than that. So we could potentially change it to being less days. We could change it to being less hours. Not particularly important, but we'll get there. So when we're talking about stock issues, I already went over this in my notes for my class, but there's an acronym a lot of people use, which is SHPSA, when we're talking about significant harms, inherency, plan, solvency, advantages. And of course, there's one last consideration, which is topicality, which some people think of as a stock issue and other people just think of as sort of a priori burden independent of that. But I actually want to start with that discussion very briefly because before you can discuss things like the harms, the inherency, plan, all that stuff, you have to understand what the topic is asking for, right? Do that analysis that we did where we mentioned that here's what the topic's about. And then from there, we're able to develop a plan. So, significant harms. When we talk about significant harms, it's a discussion of what is wrong in the status quo, i.e., before we implement or before we affirm the topic with a topical plan, what is wrong in the world. And so I've done a few Google searches that I'll pull up right now that should hopefully get us there. And I want to note for people that when you are doing research, especially initially, right, very introductory level, and this isn't necessarily great for like purely academic drives. What you're looking for is what I tend to refer to as imright.com, right? You're just looking for some sort of website or some sort of article that is somewhat authoritative that can give you the type of argument that you're looking for. Because if you're the app, regardless of whether you believe the work week is too long, you have to find evidence which indicates that it is. And so I just did a Google search. I literally just Googled Americans work too much, as you can see there. And one of the resources that it got me to was this, which is an NPR article. NPR obviously being a pretty good source for a lot of things. And it indicates that the 4-day work week boosted workers' productivity by 40% in Japan. And I went from here just using the same Google search until I got to this article, which was titled, What If You Had a 4-Day Work Week? Why Don't You? As you can see, it's New York Times, so I didn't have access to it. But I found access to it anyway, and we'll be talking about this in a second. And then after that, I did a different Google search, which was a 4-day work week would. And I tried to find just something that would get me to why it's good to change it now. So, this is actually the starting point for us, which is from insider.com, and it is what a 4-day work week could do to your brain and your body. And I like Insider a lot of the time because they have these bullet points right at the beginning, which sort of can let you know if it's worth reading the rest of the article. Obviously, when we're doing this discussion, we can see right here that it indicates that, one, American workers are working the same hours that they worked 50 years ago, and that working such long hours hurts them in terms of stress and burnout. It also hurts things like, or rather, that changing it could help productivity, loyalty, things of that nature. And then you would be able to go through this article. So let's start out number one, which is this quotation, right? Which is, this is how long the average American work weeks are. They're nearly the same, and it's associated with increased levels of stress and burnout. And this is obviously coming from Insider. So we just open up this and we go to harms, right? And I'm just going to paste the text from there. And so if I wanted to actually make a like claim level statement about that, I would say that the current 5-day work week is associated with increased levels of stress and burnout, because I think we can all agree that that is probably a bad thing. And then when we talk about the warrant level, we'd be saying, according to insider.com, according to whichever author it is, right? Insider.com. And then we'd have that statement that you can see right there. And we could go a little bit deeper, but obviously we're just doing this sort of basic level, very basic level. So then the question becomes like inherency. And with my students, I talked about how there are 3 kinds of inherency. Technically there's 4, but the 4th one is garbage, so we won't worry about that now. But the 3 types of inherency we generally hear about are structural inherency, attitudinal inherency, and existential inherency. And structural inherency refers to their literal structures, i.e. there's treaties or there's laws, there's something that on a structural level actually prevents it from occurring. Attitudinal inherency is where we say that just the will isn't there, right? Whether it's the president, the people of a country, for some reason people don't want this thing to happen. And then lastly, there is existential inherency, which is kind of also garbage and indicates that because it hasn't happened and because it would be a good idea that it would happen, like clearly something's stopping it. So in our instance, we're just looking for something which suggests like what is going on in terms of inherency, what is preventing the plan from passing now. And so I haven't done that search yet because I wanted to do it with y'all. So why do we still have a 5-day work week? So let's go to the Atlantic first. That seems fine, right? Where the 5-day work week came from. It's relatively, it's great, cool. So let's see if we can find anything in here that indicates that the 5-day work week. There we go, perfect. So right here, we found what we would refer to as attitudinal inherency, right? According to this article, the 5-day work week might already have so much cultural inertia that it can't be changed. Most companies can't just tell employees not to come in on Fridays, etc., because they'd be putting themselves at a disadvantage. Perfect. So let's go ahead and use this. This comes from the Atlantic. So at the warrant level, we have, according to the Atlantic, this thing. Oh, I should say Atlantic. And then claim level. So our claim would be that cultural inertia and hesitancy from, I'll spell that right in a second, hesitancy from businesses have resulted in the 5-day work week being hard to overturn. Let's just say that, right? And we'll change that to be correct. Great. So now we have claim level, and then we have data to support that. Now, when you do warrants, obviously, you'd probably want to include the URL. You'd want to include the author, but we're just doing this to demonstrate here, right? This is attitudinal inherency and somewhat structural as well, but it just indicates that, like, the will is not there to overcome the barrier that exists in the status quo. So, sorry for that. Oh, no. That's the end of me. To go back to one of those articles that we had pulled up previously, we found this thing from NPR, which indicated that a 4-day work week boosted workers' productivity by 40% in Japan. And then we had that other article from Insider, so I'll just put that over here, that says that we would increase productivity, loyalty, overall happiness, and all that stuff, because we're going to need that for this next section. So we know for sure there is someone somewhere that indicates, and in this instance it's Microsoft, that indicates one way to resolve for the problem of the status quo would be to move to a 4-day work week. So let's say we did that as our plan. The United States, we'll just say USFG, should shorten the work week to 4 days. Okay, so we'd come down to solvency, and we'd want to read an argument which indicates that, like, here's why that would be good. So claim level, we would say that shortening the work week to 4 days would bolster worker productivity. Sure. And our warrant for that could be NPR or Insider, and that's sort of the news articles we were just looking at in a second. I guess I'll just copy it for the sake of consistency. So, cool. Paste. Oh, accidentally turned on my VPN. All right. Well, we'll worry about that later. So the next thing from here is to evaluate the topical nature, right? So we already discussed this a little bit as to what the resolution refers to. There's a lot of ways of evaluating topicality, but for now we're just going to worry about reasonability, right? Do you think, and do you think a judge would think, your audience would think, did I spell inertia wrong? I definitely did. Funny. The audience would think that this statement, USFG should shorten the work week to 4 days, is a affirmation of this topic, right? That we're not trying to cheat and deviate. I think that we probably would get away with it. In this instance, it seems like a very legit argument, and we have warrants and data to be able to support that. So then we come down to advantages, which is the last thing we're going to talk about. And actually, we can use some of the information here to be able to bolster our advantages. And when we talk about advantages, we're sort of discussing units of argumentation based on 4 components, right? Which is sort of the uniqueness, link, internal link, and the impacts, right? And uniqueness is, of course, the status quo, what's happening now. The link is the plan. Internal link is, and then stuff happens. And the impact is why we care. So, in this instance, what is the uniqueness? What is the status quo? So, in the status quo, based on this information, and based on this information and this information, especially this one, we could say that, let's say, currently workers are burnt out, which is causing them stress. And then let's say the link level. So the link is the plan passes and the USFG moves to a 4-day work week. So then we do the internal link level stuff, right? Which explains, obviously, relative to the uniqueness, that something about the plan changing reduces stress. And I think we can do that based on this stuff, which is, I would say, according to NPR, the move to a 4-day work week would increase overall happiness of workers. And then why we care. And the why we care could be a bunch of reasons, right? We could say that happy workers are productive. We could say that happy workers are healthier, etc., right? And so we just come up with a unique line of reasoning as to why it's a good thing that we implemented this resolution. So then, topicality, the last thing I want to mention here, because we've mentioned it a few times throughout, is topicality is only a question of the plan text specifically, right? You can claim whatever advantages you want and whatever solvency you want, but those are separate issues, right, that can be contested in a different way. The only question of topicality is this statement, is the plan a topical or a faithful affirmation of this topic? And I think in this instance it probably is. So that's all I have for you. Don't want to make this too long. This is just meant to be a supplement. If you have any questions and you're one of my students, you know where to email me. And if you're one of the people just watching on YouTube, then just reach out to us on the channel. Thank you so much. Have a great day.